I'm here with Chris Nielsen, owner of Electric Cab of Austin. And Chris, could you please tell me about your business and how it got started?
Well, in March of 2008, I started what was known then as Capital Cruisers. That was the first electric shuttle service in Texas. What we did is we realized that it was difficult to get a short-range ride downtown, and real true multimodal transportation wasn't really available in the downtown district. Your choices were either a traditional taxi, which is ideal for going to the airport or going multiple miles, or a pedicab, which are very hard to get a hold of, and a lot of people just aren't comfortable riding them. So whenever somebody needed a ride from, say, a hotel to a restaurant, there were really no options available. I noticed there was an obvious need in the market.
Great. And how's business been since you started with Capital Cruisers?
Well, we never had a problem getting customers. What we had a problem with was getting the city to first recognize that this was a viable service, second to get a permit, and third to actually make them release the permit and create it.
And so it sounds like there's been some complications as far as getting the go-ahead from the city. Could you describe how those complications have put kind of a damper on, or at least prevented your company from being as competitive and earning profits for your business as it could be?
Well, the problem with, or the problems that we ran into the city is there was literally nothing on the books pertaining to electric vehicles. Nothing at all. The only thing that was anywhere on the City of Austin website pertaining to electric vehicles was a $500 rebate program to purchase them. But other than that, there was nothing written. And the problem that we ran into is the Ground Transportation Department's position at the time was that absence of the law was tantamount to breaking the law, which, as any patriot knows, that the opposite is true. But we had to go to court 226 times just to prove that we weren't breaking a law that didn't exist.
And those court hearings were for tickets that you received, or what exactly was that about?
Well, tickets all the way up to arrests. I mean, they started writing us tickets that we didn't have a permit, and the thing is, the permit didn't exist. It's like requiring somebody to have a permit to chew gum and walk down the sidewalk. I mean, if the permit doesn't exist, why are you writing the ticket? But that's whenever it became obvious that there's moneyed interest behind the scenes going on.
Yeah, and let's talk about those money interests at work. Now, Austin City Council basically issues, for regular taxis, permits, and these have to be approved by the City Council. It has to go through the government. I believe a permit's something like $400 per year. How does that permitting process and the fact that that does exist for normal taxis and it doesn't exist for your taxis, how does that affect your business?
Oh, it makes it really interesting. It's we'd always get a question from the police whenever we're getting a ticket is, well, why don't you just apply to be a taxi? Well, it's because we don't meet the criteria of a taxi service. We can't go in all the city limits. We don't have 24-hour availability. And then they say, well, why don't you apply to be a pedicab? Well, the same thing. We didn't have the criteria. We're not a bicycle, but basically the law just hadn't caught up to newer options in transportation. But they finally did create a permitting process, and I think that will help streamline interactions with the city and other businesses now that everybody's on the same page. But for a long time, people and other members of the transportation industry were just crying foul and saying it was not fair. And I thought that was kind of funny because pedicabs operated for a little over 10 years without having a permit, but they were the first ones beating the drum saying that we didn't have them.
And tell me, why do you think there were people also in the taxi business that were opposing someone like yourself starting up a business and having a chance to provide your own services to people?
Well, a lot of taxi, well, that's actually a double-sided, or double-edged sword, I guess. On one end, there's the franchise owners. They just don't want competition, period. And they have the money for the lobbyists. They have the money to be very influential when they want to be. On the flip side of that, then there's the taxi drivers. And they have their own association, and they saw it as we were taking their money. But I had to keep reminding them that it's a free market and it's not their money. It's up to the consumer. Right. And I kept pointing out that we were taking the rides that they were turning away. But logic kind of left this whole situation a long time ago.
And so I want to hear more about the actual process that's in place that's been created for electric vehicles like your company to get permits and to be able to be on the road without being harassed or ticketed by police. Could you explain to me this new pilot program that the council approved to give your company latitude to do the business that you do?
Well, the pilot program was approved October 6th of last year. We're still waiting on them to actually give us the permit, but we kind of have an understanding that we've done everything that we can on our end. What it is we're going to operate in downtown Austin on a route system, and similar to a bus, but we're going to be market driven, and meaning that we're going to be around whenever the customers want us to be around rather than just having set stops. Because the main reason why the Dillo failed is nobody knew where it was, nobody knew where it was going, and you just never knew what was going to happen if you got on the Dillo or where it was going to take you. Our routes are they're strictly in the downtown entertainment district, and since we have just one-way streets, it's just so easy. We can either drop them off right in front of the venue that they want to go to, or the nearest intersection, but there's not one part of downtown that we don't hit.
And how does that affect your business? I know you guys have a pretty free range as far as where you drive downtown and take people. Do these routes that have been set lock you into certain areas, or does it allow freedom for you guys to go where you need to go?
Well, the routes for now do lock us into a certain area, but I have the ability to change the route as needed. So if I notice that more people want to go to this intersection rather than one of the ones on the route, all I have to do is just tell the transportation department that I'm changing the route. And I would still prefer to do A to B transportation, but at least we got our foot in the door now.
Right.
And they're requiring us to have the same kind of insurance that taxi companies have and pedicab companies, which we've always had anyway. And that we have licensed drivers, but really we're not changing that much. Right. And for a while they wanted us to put doors on these vehicles until I proved to them finally that these vehicles just aren't designed to have them. So now we're going to have a safety strap, which saves the company a ridiculous amount of money. The doors are going to be $2,000 a piece, and a safety strap is $70. So that's huge. It's a work in progress.
Well, that's great. As you probably know, there were some new taxi permits issued last week. I believe 30 for Austin Cab, 15 for Lone Star Cab. It's 45 new taxis that are going to be on the road. Again, Austin City Council controls that number, and to many it seems kind of arbitrary, but adding those more taxis on the road, especially with this new surcharge they've added per passenger for $1 per passenger in peak hours, which is basically the evening to the early morning hours, how is that going to affect your business and your ability to compete?
Absolutely nothing. It won't affect us at all. We have a really loyal customer base. We have a very niche market, and that's just going to be 45 more taxis that are turning down the same rides that we will happily pick up.
So you see the strength in your company is that because you guys don't have necessarily a set rate, and because you're kind of in this downtown entertainment district exclusively, you see it as a much more practical way for people to get rides than taxis? I mean, do you see that as the benefit or kind of the plus of your company?
I see it more practical in the sense that, like, say somebody wants a ride from Stubbs down to West 6th, that's too far for a pedicab to take them. But it's not quite far enough to be cost effective for a taxi to do it. And those are the exact rides we take. And we've never had a problem getting rides in these vehicles, even when it's cold. But we just have our own unique market.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you guys have cornered a niche as far as the downtown scene's concerned. What would you like Austin to do to create a more level playing field for taxis and electric cab companies like your own?
Do what every other major metropolitan city has done, deregulate. I mean, whenever I say deregulate, I don't mean to be specific, don't regulate the number of companies that can operate it. Don't regulate the number of permits. That's what the market would figure out. What I am in favor of regulation of is making sure that they have insurance, making sure that the drivers aren't serial killers. But other than that, why not let the market decide how many vehicles will be out there? I mean, that's been my biggest problem with that, is they want me to keep sharing data with the city council so they can just determine if my business is viable or not. And down to my core, I disagree with that, because it's not up to them to decide whether or not my business makes sense. If my business doesn't make sense, I go out of business. That's just how it works. But unfortunately, the city doesn't see it that way, and politicians are terrible businessmen. So I'm a little nervous about what they're going to do with the data that I give them.
I can agree with that. And what kind of burdens have they put on you to receive this data for the pilot program that's currently going on?
They want to know how many passengers we transport nightly. They want to know the range of the passengers that we're taking them, and we're going to do our best to record it. But at the same time, I don't really see where it's their business. I really don't. I mean, if we weren't taking enough passengers, then we wouldn't make any money, and we wouldn't want to keep doing it. But they haven't really told us the parameters of sharing data with them, but they just say they just want all the information. But I think that places an undue burden on my drivers to have to count every single person that they drive and then figure out the distance. I mean, that's not what they're here for. They're not here to do market research. They're here to just do a job.
Can completely understand that. So going forward with the pilot program, and the fact that now you don't have to worry about being ticketed downtown or having drivers arrested for driving your cabs as what's happened in the past, what do you see as the future of electric cab?
Well, assuming that the city keeps its word, which that's a big assumption there, I feel that we're going to get to the next level. We're going to, after we brand it here in Austin, we're going to branch out to other cities. And I've been talking to people all over the country that are starting these up. No one has run into the problems that I have. I mean, all of them they've kind of butted heads with the city just because they're new and people aren't used to them. But the city, every single time, in every single city outside of Austin, it lasts a couple months before they realize, hey, this is a pretty cool service. Let's just give them a permit. Austin, not so much, but hopefully that'll change.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. You provide a valuable service and have been successful in your own right in promoting this industry, and the fact that they're fuel-efficient vehicles, they're not pumping out gasoline, definitely is a good thing for downtown.
Yeah, it costs 27 cents to charge these things, and we get about 40 miles out of it, so under a penny a mile.
Amazing. Well, is there anything else you want to add, Chris, about say about Austin and their taxi permitting process and how that's affected your company?
Well, I think that Austin should move away from regulating the number of entities that are allowed to operate in the city. I mean, that's whenever you control the market, you're actually hurting the consumer. I think that free market capitalism is oh, really, it's the backbone of our economy. And why are we placing all these undue burdens? I mean, it works in Dallas, it works in Houston, San Antonio. Matter of fact, every other city in Texas has deregulated taxis. And somehow people are still getting rides, and people are still getting around, and nobody's taking food off of another person's plate, as some people would have the general public believe. And I've never even heard of a transportation company going out of business. So the market's there. And we just let economics 101 set in and get the government out of it.
Well, thanks so much for being with me today, Chris. I am really inspired by your creativity and putting forth your company, Electric Cab, and I wish you the best in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.